Picture this. You're sitting at a dinner table, right across from the person who is supposed to know you better than literally anyone else in the world. The food is great, the lighting is soft, yet sitting there, you feel this crushing, hollow exhaustion that you just can't quite explain. Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack exactly why that feeling is happening to you, and we'll look at the massive psychological toll of trying to be the perfect, frictionless partner.
So let's dive right into this visceral symptom. Think about your day. You've said all the right things, you've been endlessly supportive, and you've skillfully avoided every possible conflict. But as you look at your partner, you realize something kind of terrifying. You feel more alone right now than when you are completely by yourself. Seriously, why is that?
The harsh truth here is that most relationships secretly fail long before anyone ever packs a bag. And they aren't failing because of some big, explosive fight or a sudden betrayal. They fail because your relationship has suddenly turned into a permanent performance rather than an actual partnership. You see, most relationships aren't failing due to a lack of effort. Actually, it's quite the opposite. They're failing because the architecture you've built is completely designed for a mask, and your real self is just being silently murdered day after day.
Which brings us to Section 1, the intimacy paradox, or how closeness can actually function as distance.
This whole problem usually starts with a psychological structure that Carl Jung famously called the persona. It's the social mask we wear just to be palatable, acceptable, and most importantly, safe. In a relationship, this often boils down to a single organizing principle: never, ever be the cause of someone else's discomfort. Because of this, you achieve maximum adaptation to the room, right? But you give absolute minimum access to who you actually are. You've achieved a closeness that functions as distance, because your partner has essentially made a commitment to a convincing approximation of you rather than the real you. It's the ultimate paradox. True intimacy requires you to be confusing, inconvenient, and unedited, but your setup commands you stay perfectly legible and easy to manage.
So why on earth do we do this to ourselves? Well, this internal surveillance system isn't something you consciously chose as an adult. Not at all. It's actually a highly sophisticated emotional technology that you built as a child out of brute necessity for survival. You learned super early on that when you were easy or good, love and warmth were just more available. So you developed this monitoring system to scan the environment before you ever speak. And today, when your adult relationship, you are still running that exact same childhood software. You are constantly feeling your partner's emotional temperature before deciding what is true enough to say out loud.
Moving on to Section 2, let's look at the biology of burnout and the real physical cost of wearing this mask.
To really understand the neurobiological cost here, we can look to habit expert James Clear. He points out that your brain is essentially a lazy hunter-gatherer. It's designed by evolution for energy efficiency and cognitive ease. So think about it. Maintaining a persona of endless patience, constantly reading the room, and calibrating yourself in real time, that is a massive energetic investment. Eventually, your brain looks at this exhausting mask and interprets it as a literal threat to its own survival.
And because favoring an artificial personality goes completely against your fundamental biology, your psyche eventually punishes you. This is exactly where that sudden, cold irritability comes from. It's a rage that has nowhere to go, because expressing it would completely shatter the image of the endlessly accommodating person you've constructed. It leads to a very specific kind of depletion that makes you resent the very person you are trying so desperately to please. Listen, you aren't failing at love. You are just losing a war against an environment you've designed for your own self-erasure.
Okay, let's flip the script in Section 3, reclaiming your internal authority and taking your power back.
To save the relationship, or honestly, just to save yourself, you have to stop losing this war and reclaim what Jung called your internal authority. This is the ability to validate your own subjective experience without relying on the approval of others. You see, most people compulsively explain themselves when they set a boundary. They'll offer a whole 3-paragraph explanation for why they can't do something. But that is just a sophisticated form of submission. You are literally seeking permission to exist. Reclaiming your power starts with what we call the clean no. That's a boundary held firmly without that low hum of guilt. Delivering this clean no requires a bit of practice. First up, you have to pause the edit. Catch that gap between what you actually think and what you are about to say just to make it palatable. Second, state the boundary clearly. And third, hold the silence. Stop justifying your existence. You really have to realize that disappointing someone is often the most honest thing available to you, and it is absolutely necessary if you want true intimacy to finally begin.
That brings us to Section 4, the power of strategic silence.
and using silence as a form of dominance.
I know, holding that silence is incredibly difficult, but to put it into practice, we can wield a brilliant philosophical weapon championed by Friedrich Nietzsche, strategic silence. He argued powerfully that the reactive mind is a subjugated mind. The moment you feel compelled to justify yourself, you have already entered their game and, frankly, you've lost. By choosing strategic silence and intentionally withdrawing from the performance, you force the other person to confront their own internal noise rather than allowing them to project it all onto you.
Let's be clear, silence is not passivity, and it is definitely not cowardice. It is absolute dominance over your own energy. Strategic silence completely breaks the cycle of manipulation and proves that you are no longer just a statistical cog in someone else's narrative. When you stop being so functionally available to everyone else's whims and reactions, you finally conserve your psychic energy for what actually matters to you.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Architecting Authentic Peace and Designing Your Life for Authenticity.
Real transformation happens when you stop fighting your brain and start restructuring your daily environment. Pulling from James Clear's concept of choice architecture, you must design your life so that authenticity becomes the path of least resistance. This means setting up your routines and your boundaries so that being your true self is literally easier than putting on that exhausting mask. Yes, you have to be willing to be entirely inconvenient, and you have to risk being misunderstood in order to create a space where your genuine self can actually thrive.
And look, this isn't about being cruel or cold to others, not at all. It's about what Jung called fidelity to the law of your own being. The hard truth here is that no savior is coming to pull you out of this polished prison you've built. Taking radical responsibility for your life means you stop being functionally available for everyone else's needs. And it's kind of beautiful, because when you stop giving yourself away for free, you finally become valuable and rare.
So if you are truly ready to stop being a statistical cog in someone else's story and you want to start building a relationship based on your real face, I want you to make a symbolic declaration in the comments right now. Just go down and write, "I choose my peace." This isn't just a YouTube comment, it is a vote for your new identity as someone who values their own internal truth far more than external approval.
As you prepare to take your next essential step toward internal mastery, I want you to ask yourself a tough question. What are you truly willing to risk? Will you stay comfortable but hollow and exhausted in your polished prison? Or will you risk the temporary discomfort of finally being met exactly as you truly are? The journey to becoming whole is a long one, guys, and the next explainer on your screen is an absolute essential next step in mastering your internal mastery. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you over there.